I have the pleasure to introduce Carolyn Latanision again. She is also an extremely nice person and she donates her time by sharing her knowledge with us. And she's been teaching all day and came through traffic all the way from Winchester and Woburn to come here. So we're glad to have her. She's been here before. She was a juror for one of our members' exhibits. She did, during COVID, she did a Zoom workshop on a Saturday. Do you remember that? And so I feel like she's not a stranger. And I see a lot of people who I know who don't come here often. So I know that you came here for Carolyn. But her CV is pretty amazing. And she came from a family where art was important. So her mother was also an artist and also an art teacher, which is what Carolyn does. And I think that made it so she could see art on a daily basis. She is accomplished in all the mediums because she's been a teacher. She had to learn all the mediums like oils and whatever. But she's gravitated towards watercolor as she called it her addiction. She has achieved signature membership in both the American Watercolor Society and the National Watercolor Society, which is no small feat. And you may have gone to the MFA to see the Turner exhibit a while ago, and Carolyn was asked by the MFA to create a video showing how Turner mixed his colors and how he painted. And I just checked, it's still on the MFA website if you want to see it. It's a really nicely done short video if you want to see her showing what Turner would have done, how Turner did it. So that's one of her many, many accomplishments, and she's won a lot of awards. I've seen her at the Salmon Gunning Club in New York, etc. I think I admire her because she can really tackle almost any subject matter. I went to her studio and she had, she had people, she had exteriors, she had interiors, she had still lifes, she had landscapes and seascapes. So she does it all, and she does it really well. And she has donated this print of Fenway, and today's opening day. So I hope that you will enter the drawing, and the money goes to our community fund, which is for our scholarship and the food pantry. So take a moment to do that. We'll do a quick break, like a very, very short break in the middle, even though we already took a break. But this up here, so we can show it to everybody who wants to buy things like that. So I think it's time to let Carolyn talk, and she can embellish her extensive resume if I've forgotten key things. But thank you all for coming. This is a great crowd. We have a full house, and that's because of you, Carolyn. Thank you very much. Join me in welcoming.
And if, yes, you've even said my name right, I think.
Yes, I practiced.
It's everybody says Latanision, but it's really Latanision. It's a misspelled Ukrainian name, not mine, my husband's. Yeah, I've painted all my life. It was just something I did. It was, what are you going to do besides read? Paint. We didn't have a TV, so I got lots of both of those in. When I'm teaching, and even when I do a demo, I think less in terms of entertainment, I guess, than doing something that's informative, that can be useful to everyone. And for those of you who do watercolor, you may be familiar with acrylic gouache. Has anybody used acrylic gouache? This is not designer's gouache. Originally, Naomi told me someone had just done that. And so I thought, well, I'll do acrylic gouache because it enables you to set up a barrier on the paper that you can work over it, and I'll be showing you that, and you can still work over it with watercolor. But if you make a mistake, once you have that barrier between the paper and the paint, even when you use watercolor over it, you can wipe it off if you make a mistake, and that acrylic gouache barrier will still be there. It won't move. So it's really great. I don't use it often, but when I do use it, I I know I need it. I'm gonna do sky tonight. They are that's one of the trickiest things to do with watercolor. I mean, this is different than, just a few switches with the brush and leaving a few little white spots on the paper. This is when you have an important sky that maybe is the star of the painting, where the foreground is, I guess, the supporting cast in a sense. So you have to be able to handle these layers in such a way that gives you some breathing space that doesn't enable them to keep running. So this is a sky I'm going to do. I didn't particularly change the foreground because I don't want to confuse you by putting in another foreground. Typically, what I would do is choose the sky, and I don't care about these buildings. I mean, this is literally the Bronx in New York. But I'll pick another subject for the foreground. But whatever the subject would be, it would be backlit with a kind of sky like this. What I did was put a little skyline in here just so you can track where I am on this painting. And you still see that? Okay. And so that you can kind of follow along better where I am relative to this photograph. You don't have to have a good photograph with skies because and I have a tendency to take them from moving cars. It seems like in the middle of the road is when you see the best skies. And I've learned that you shouldn't do that when you're driving. So I have a lot of good skies from the passenger seat. Skies can be really, really messy. So when you're painting, I mean, here's a different sky. Hold it so you can see it. Am I in the way? I am a little bit in the way, aren't I? Can I move the table in some manner? So.
Perfect. It's okay. He's in a meeting.
Okay. This is a different sky, same type, sundown. This is yet another one. This is just outside my studio. I just walked out one night and there it was. When you have clouds like this, you obviously can't have the blue underneath. So you've got to compose with your areas of blue, and the same thing for white clouds. While I'm not demonstrating that now, that is another type of sky to be aware of that you can do well with acrylic wash. I always tell my students to compose negatively with the blues, and you can change the shapes, you can change the positions, and if you just you can do a little thumbnail and just get those blues composed the way you want to, and lo and behold, there the clouds are. And I think it took me years to figure this out. With oil paint, anything is possible. It's easy, but with watercolor, So, and I think everybody's tendency is to want to do the clouds first. You're thinking clouds. That's the positive. If you twist it around and think of the sky spaces as your positive, the clouds are basically all set. They're all there for you. So if these were white clouds, I would be composing and recomposing these blue areas, painting those in first, much the way I'll show you here. And then when that's dry, then I can go back and work the whites. If you haven't worked with acrylic wash, this mixes me up. They have these in different sets. This is a 12 color set. I'm gonna work with literally red, yellow, and blue to do this. But these 12 color sets are very nice. They also have 16 or 18 color sets, and I think maybe even a bigger one than that. Then you don't have to do as much mixing. But I've just brought these to show you that there is something else that you can use. When I'm working with either designer's gouache or the acrylic gouache, I use the ceramic palettes, and they have the square ones, they have round ones that have multiple wells in them. I've brought these are fabulous. And I'm just going to use these for mixing. Are you familiar with these little stacking palettes? And then wash out easily. So that's why I don't have a regular big palette with me. I'm going to start with the yellows in this sky. And a little, when you're working with designer's gouache, you use a lot of color. But when you're working with acrylic gouache, these little tubes last forever because you're only working with a tiny bit of paint. They're very strong colors. So I'm going to start with the yellow and add water and get that first layer in. I should be able to get straight through this for you because I have the layers prepared here. This is a guess in adding water.
Yeah, Carolyn, can you try to stay a little farther away? There's an awful lot of head on the screen up
That's
there.
what I'm wondering. I don't know if I can. Can I push this further up?
Yes, you,
That will help.
let's move the lights out of it.
Up or down, back towards the camera?
Yeah, toward the camera, actually.
Towards the camera.
Yeah.
No,
Better?
yeah,
that's good. I know you don't.
And then move the table back a little bit.
No, I can stay here. I'm okay.
I suggest moving the table back a little bit. The problem is this, what?
Oh, I see the camera.
The table back,
Yeah, does that help?
a little bit more. Okay, go, all right. I think it helps. Yeah, you were gonna stand there now and I think you'll see that you'll. you
We
won't
had
be-
set it up for sitting, so that's why we.
Oh, okay.
I just was-
Okay, good. You're good.
Thank you.
Okay. Right, I do have to mix this, so. I can try sitting. Let's see how I do. When I work with watercolor, I've found that a Kleenex box, that's not why I have this with me. A Kleenex box is the perfect prop for the board. It has just the right angle. I don't usually work flat unless I'm doing a demo. Are you okay? Do you see all right?
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
Did you thin that with water?
Yeah,
Acrylic wash, you can thin it with water?
yeah, yeah. It's,
Carolyn, can you explain the difference between designer's gouache and acrylic gouache?
yeah, thank you. With watercolor, there are 4 watercolor mediums. There's watercolor and designer's gouache. They're both water media. They are both soluble when they're dry. Then you have the other 2 are casein and acrylic gouache. They're insoluble when they're dry. So you can kind of pick and choose. In my classes, I have them using all 4. They get pretty good at it because if you're familiar with all 4 of them, you can fix all kinds of mistakes. Nobody's any wiser. So I think that, I have some test papers here, so I think that pretty much is about what I need for this. Put these somewhere. There doesn't crashing to the floor. I have I've done these layers on 4 different kinds of paper so that you can see the effects are going to be pretty much the same. This happens to be Fabriano, and I'm not in love with it. It used to be a really great paper, and it was bought by, I think, Artistico, and which always made school supplies. And they sort of downgraded it, I think. what you do is you start out with these skies, you start out by wetting the whole thing. And I wet it several times. Happens to be a 300-pound piece of paper. I wet it several times so that that allows the water to, be absorbed by the paper a little bit. The 300-pound papers have more internal sizing. So you get more workability with them in the long run. The 140-pound papers have more sizing on the surface to keep it from buckling. So they both accept the paint differently. If you're shaking your head, and it's a 1-inch brush. And what I'm going to do here is simply get some yellow in along here, leaving a little bit of white for this kind of hot spot with the sun that's going down. Now remember, you can recompose skies because they, I always think of skies as being rather messy, so you could reorganize them any way you want because 2 minutes from now, it's going to be completely different anyway. So there's no need to get hung up and copy the photo. It's there to give you some guidelines. And so that would be the first layer. And it has to dry completely before I could start with the next color. So on the floor. All right, so this one has yellow on it already dry. And this is where I can show you where you could start to really take advantage of the acrylic wash. It dries at the same rate as watercolor. I sometimes have people say, oh, it dries faster, but it doesn't. It's largely water. It dries at the same rate of speed as watercolor. What it doesn't do is when you wipe over it, it doesn't move. So you can build in a lot of time.
So I'm curious about when you talk about acrylic wash, how is that different from regular acrylic paint?
You could use the acrylic paint that you use on canvas. I have done whole paintings with it in the past just to show that you can, but it's very thick. It takes a lot of work to thin it down. I don't think it has the same, this is more delicate.
Okay.
I don't think it has the same beautiful working qualities as the acrylic wash. As I said, I've used it, but I don't. Just to prove that you can. If I had a choice, I wouldn't bother. This stuff is great. This is Holbein, by the way, but other, Winsor Newton makes it and some other brands as well. Oh, wait, well, I'll wet it and then I'll wet it again. I'm wetting all the way down just to keep the paper, an even surface tension. I don't have to worry about working around the buildings, or even in a case of a landscape, usually you don't even have to work. You can work all the way down almost to the bottom of the paper unless there's something really significant that's a different color, because whatever the sky is doing, everything on the ground is in a landscape is still affected by the same color. I'm going to add a little bit of red to this. No, I'm not. I'm going to set this aside. No, I'm not. I've done this next in two different stages. So to show you that, that you could do either one. You could you can choose your layers accordingly. I'm going to get the blues in first because I want to be sure I don't get green skies. So I'm going to get the blue in, and if you're painting, if you buy, they have 5 color sets of this stuff, but it doesn't have ultramarine in it. it has cyan, it's like CMYK, cyan, magenta, yellow and black and white. And that cyan, no, I've experimented with it, no matter what I do to it, I can't get a good ultramarine blue out of it using the colors that are in that set, so ultramarine is a great color to have. I'm just going to change it a little bit. Because there's an area in here that is not really, you see that? Am I in your way?
Sit down again.
Okay, this area in here is not really ultramarine blue. So I'm going to add a tiny bit of yellow to it. So I have a couple different blues in this guy. It's light. This stuff goes a long way. Oops, that really gooped out. I just want a little bit of it. This might do it. Yeah.
Are you trying to get sort of a cerulean blue?
Kind of. Yeah, more of a, yeah, more of a slightly more aquamarine kind of color. It's, yeah, how little it takes to change these colors. Okay, that'll do. All right, I'm gonna re-wet this to be sure that it's evenly wet, because at the moment it isn't.
When you put the water over your dried yellow, is the paper under the dried yellow getting wet again? Is it like protect?
I just, yeah, everything's getting wet. It's not that much of a barrier, but so, yeah, it,
The paper underneath is still getting wet.
yeah. It's just the paint itself won't move for you.
Yeah.
Just want everything evenly wet so I can get that area in. Back to the 1-inch brush. I do have to refer to this, just I'm not copying it. I just want to, I just have to remember sometimes because I get carried away and then I have paint all over the place, and so, you know, then it's not where I want it to be. It has a little bit too much yellow in it, but that's all right. We'll dry up there. I missed that spot. Now it depends on your style of painting. You could flood this with more color and water to get these strokes to smooth out, but there you don't have to. You can, you know, use your brush stroke. Depends on your style of painting, the way you like to apply paint. You know, I can hold this up and let it even out if I wanted to. I don't need it to, so I'm just going to leave it as is. And that's that.
Which kind of paper was this one, Carolyn?
This also is Fabriano.
Oh, okay. I thought you had 4 different kinds you were gonna tell us.
Well, I have also well, the next one I think is 140 pound. This is still 300. My favorite paper is not Arches. I use that for my Bethlehem Steel series because of the textural effects I can get with it. But my favorite papers is Saunders Waterford. I used that when it was still TH Saunders, and then the company was bought by Marilla, and you know the paper went downhill a little bit, but it's still my favorite. That's yeah. So this next one is
It's like a cooking show.
What?
It's like a cooking show where they take everything out. That's great. We're done.
Yeah, I guess that, okay, there you go.
You ever see it down?
Oh, I know.
There's a question, by the way, somebody had a question. Repeat the question.
So do you ever take the paper down so it doesn't buckle at all and curl to the edges?
I'm lazy. I had yellow on this one too. That's what I was kind of looking for here. This is 140 and this is, sorry. And this is the Saunders Waterford. So. Looks the same, as long as you wet it properly and. It's the wetting is everything with watercolor, wetting and timing. So now I want this one. I see that I didn't put that little streamer of blue in there. When I'm in my studio doing this, I'm less distracted. So if this is wet, this still has a lot of shine on it, so I could still get that in. Without any problem.
This was your first, this is your second one.
Yes, this was the second one. I just forgot this little strip through here. I just happened to look at that and like, oops, I forgot something. So that's that. I guess I remembered when I picked this one up.
Carolyn, is it better to let it dry naturally or use the?
You could use a hair dryer. Yeah, the only danger with the hair dryer is that if you don't get it totally dry, you can start to, pick up what you already have down because it's not totally dry yet. But once this is completely dry, I'll show you once again. I gotta prove it. Did that. It still looks like watercolor. It is watercolor. If you are entering a watercolor show, this is perfectly permissible. I notice a lot of the national and international shows now are even saying it's okay to use casein, which is a milk-based paint. And if you use water when you're painting with it, but then once it's dry, it's insoluble. You can fix it. You do a lot of good fixing with casein. Just don't tell anybody you did it and they won't say you were cheating. You're not cheating, but so I would not advise wetting the paper like this because the sponge doesn't deposit enough water on it. I'm just going to let this, I'm going to wet this and let it kind of perk while I get the next color mixed. Now I just traced this little sky. I drew one and then traced it on the others, make it fast. The wetting is really important. Even though you might feel as though you're putting a little bit of color in a certain area, you might feel, well, I don't have to wet the whole paper, but again, you want to keep this, it's easier to work if the surface tension is the same, but it's also, you don't run any risk then of having the edges develop. Now, if you wanted to do, I don't know, let's say you're painting a barn and you want to have a lot of weathered wood look on it. You could put your whole first layer down like this in your lightest value. Then as you work on these layers with watercolor on top of it, or more of this, either way, that first layer will stay put. So if you kind of go wrong somewhere, you can, oops, wipe it off, keep going. So once this is down, it's a barrier. It's a delicate barrier, but as you could see from you know, by my being able to sponge it, it's also at the same time fairly strong. I'm gonna alter this yellow now. I could have, I'm gonna turn this into orange. I could have put the orange in next. I just want to be sure that I just started with the yellow, then the blue in order to be sure I don't get the yellow and the blue in combination. So I don't get an orange sky. Come on. Okay, that's probably a teeny bit more. See how little you need to get the color change. Okay. Still wet. It doesn't hurt to let it sit like this. So that way you're building in time for yourself to work. It's getting dull right here. So I know I have to re-wet it. It shouldn't be running wet, but at the same time, it shouldn't be dulling down either. A long time ago, I tried taping paper down, then I tried tacking it down, and then I decided it was just all too much bother. If you're using decent paper, it's fine. Occasionally I'll wet the back a little bit just to kind of flatten it down. Sometime when I'm working on a painting, I will flatten it mid painting by flipping the paper down upside down on a board, or if you have you know, some very flat carpeting in your house, you just face down on the carpet, sponge the back, put a board down on top, a toolbox on top of that, or a chair, or anything heavy you have, and let it sit overnight. Even a couple of hours will do it, and then it's nice and flat, and you can just go on from there. So I want to get these oranges in. I want to keep some of that yellow. I'd be sure that I managed to preserve some of that. And this goes up into here. This orange is a little more yellow still than I'd like it to be, but it'll be okay. So light shining off the paper here, so I can't, I'm not sure if I have to stand up a second. I can't quite see it. Am I in the way? I am.
Well, just sit down regular, stand up regular, then sit down regularly. That way we can see what you're doing.
Yeah. I'm gonna risk something here and put a little more red in this. It's going down over the yellow, so it's not as orange as I had hoped. Okay, that's better. Now these fuzzier little edges, get them in simply, because after when all is done, you can come back and do some area wetting and then get, you know, fuss with them a little bit more. Okay, that's enough. Got my orange in. A little more up in here. Okay, so much for that. On the floor. I'll show you that. I can show you that right now, rather than waiting until later. Let's say, you want to, just, get these edges of the orange a little more, distinct. Now you can just wet a portion of the paper and get in and, and I use the sponge for that because I know this is going to be fast. So now I can get in here and do this kind of thing. If that's your thing, and you're determined that it has to be that way. So you can get in there and play with it a bit. To see what happened there. That sky that was underneath just stayed, didn't go anywhere. Okay. I'm going to mix another color here now. I'm going to get the gray, all those dark grays in here now. Can you see it?
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I'm aiming for. So in this case, to get this blue to gray down, I've got to add both red and yellow. Red and yellow are orange, and orange is complement of blue, so should gray it down. It's a little trickier, but not bad. We'll see what. Before I go any further.
Then an eyedropper?
I have somebody in my class who is an ink and paper testing company. They're plastic pipettes. She brings them in by the armload. She has an international paper testing company, and so any questions we have about our paper, she'll come in with microscopic views of it. She's the one who said, because have you ever used a piece of watercolor paper and all of a sudden you find that the paint is soaking in too much, or you're getting weird things going on? It's because the paper's too dry. And she said that just when it comes and put it in a plastic bag, seal it. When you need another piece of paper, take it out, seal the bag up again, so it maintains the some moisture. So I've got to get this to sort of violet, and then add the yellow. Yeah. I think this. Again, I'm not necessarily trying to match that exactly, but I want to get a grayed down blue. Not green, which is kind of what I have at the moment.
You were doing regular watercolors, or do you have paint spray?
Hmm?
If you weren't using these acrylic washes, sometimes to gray down, you use paint spray into the blue mixture to make it gray down. Paint spray.
Payne's Gray's okay, but the only thing you have to remember about it is it has black in it, so it sometimes is dull. Payne's Gray looks terrific, when it's wet on the paper, but when it dries, it's dull because it has black pigment in it.
I've seen the combination of, ultramarine blue and burnt umber makes it a nice neutral, does this have?
Yeah,
burnt
I
umber?
mean, that's what, if you have a bigger
Oh,
set,
oh.
you have more options.
Right, right.
But I figured
You're trying to do 3.
if you, you could actually pull something like this off perfectly well with 3 primary colors. So if you want to just order 3 colors,
Mhm.
you're good.
Mhm.
And you want to experiment with this, just buy red. This is lemon yellow, pure red and ultramarine blue.
Mm.
And if you don't like it, then you've only bought 3.
Right.
This is kind of proof that you can do it. And, you know, if I told my classes to, when they've used this, to buy the 3 colors. And invariably, there are a number of people who they go online and they say this is like, ooh, like that. And then that's what they buy instead. So that's just fine. But if, you know, don't want to spend a lot of money, for skies. I mean, you could get pretty much every color that you need with this, but it's, you know, a little more painstaking than having the water in that. I always like to prove that it can be done.
Yeah.
Okay. So. Here we go, once again. Now that color that that little bit of orange that I put in there to reshape those clouds a little bit at the bottom edge. I couldn't do it when the paper was all evenly wet, but once that first layer has dried and I'm now adding this on top. I can, you know, just do one section and have it work without the original colors moving. Now, let's say you get to the last layer of this, and you can start working on it with watercolor. Watercolor will layer on top of this perfectly well. The only thing you have to remember is that if you decide to wipe, oops, the watercolor will come up. So you can have,
So the watercolor does not sink in the paper at all then? It sits on top of the acrylic.
yeah. The acrylic is a very gentle barrier between your paint and your paper. I mean, sorry, the water and paper. So it stays there, stays in place, but it doesn't allow, it doesn't move. So you can continue to layer over it. You can do as many layers as you want. The darker the paint and the less water that's in it, it does start, you can get muddy, but not muddy like watercolor can when you continue to work over it. Because it doesn't recombine, it just sits there. Okay. This layer is a little more tricky for me sitting down, so just bear with me while I get it on here. I want to try to keep that lighter blue open through this area. A bit of red can mix in. By the way, I have some big brushes here too. This is a 30, size 30. Some people may feel more comfortable using a brush like this to spread the paint. Just get that little bit of that in here too. And when I start scribbling. I have to stand up. I can't see what I'm doing very well. Try to stay back. Yeah, if only I could do this at an easel, it would be great, but. I can't. More water in there, more, if I add more water and mix it here, I could, tilt this and let the paint run around. It's just, it's bleeding out, just about. As I'd like it to, except for this bottom edge. I'm not crazy about that. And I have something else with me to show you, so to help you, how you, deal with that kind of thing, but. If I were to leave this as is, it would be fine. It's up to you as the artist, how much you want to mess around with it. How close you want to stay to your reference. It's completely up to you. So. I'll hold this up momentarily. Can you see it well enough? So it is that simple. Your biggest problem here is just spreading the paint. All right. In this one, I've done exactly what I just did. So here you have the sky again. Now I simplified these buildings down here and I did them only with these colors. It looks a little bit like, I don't know, children's book illustration here at the moment with these 3 layers of color here. But what I want you to know, and I don't have watercolor paint with me, what I want you to know is now if you wanted to get back into here and do more detail, fuss around with this to make it a little more realistic, you can just pull out your watercolors and you don't have to keep mixing this stuff. You can just grab stuff off your palette. But what I do want to show you here is that if I wanted to get a somewhat more atmospheric effect in the clouds, you see this is darker in through here in places. If you really want to have that, you can wet an area here and very gently add in your just an extra layer of dark. So that's more water in that. I can barely reach what I'm doing there. Sorry. What you don't want to do is get brush marks. So that's why you wet beyond where you're going to be putting color. But you see what I can pull off there. So, this is the sneaky stuff you can do.
We have a question.
Yeah.
From the people on Zoom. With acrylic gouache, do you get a drying shift?
You get
A drying shift, I guess, does the color change in the dry?
a little bit, it gets a little bit lighter. Probably not as much as watercolor.
Okay.
When you wet with a sponge, you don't get, you don't get the paper as wet, so, you know, but you could go back with the sponge now and, you know, play with it.
If it's still wet.
Hmm?
If
Yeah,
it's still
If
wet.
it's still wet, yeah. But none of that other stuff is going to move, so you have the option to. You know, go back in and. If you like playing, it's kind of like, I don't know, playing in the sandbox. So you can go back in and fuss with it, down in here, where I didn't. Play with that orange edge anymore, I can still wet through there. I don't want to wet up into there anymore at this point. But I can still I could still go in and add more oranges in here. And get some of those other effects. And if you do it and you don't like it, you just take the sponge and take it off. Can't do that with oils. I mean, not on oils, but with watercolor. With oils, anything's possible. Doing a sky with oils is so much easier. Negotiating watercolor. So I'm gonna take out, I mean, that's basically it. If I keep running to stand up. Let's say I wanted to add some color to this still before turning to watercolor and making it a little bit you know, detailed, whatever it is you might want to do to this. There are plenty of things I could do to this at this point, but that's not neither here nor there as far as the stem is concerned. Okay, let's take some orange and put it on that. It's not a good color to put on top, but it will shift all of this without shifting any of your edges. So I can, you know, put it in some places, not others. I can pick up some of the darker tones and overlay.
Do these paints have the same sense of transparent or opaque the way watercolor, traditional watercolor paints do, or are these all transparent?
I find them all to be about the same. They aren't super. Yeah, I mean, these are heavier here, so they don't look as transparent as the sky, but I mean, anything I used up in here was basically all the same.
Yeah.
They didn't, you know, it's not like using winter blue versus ultramarine blue, or I don't use the cadmium colors because they are too opaque for me, but can you see what were you able to see what I did there? Yeah. So you can continue to layer in here and then stop and use your watercolor on top.
And the reason it doesn't move is because of the acrylic.
Yeah.
It's not that it's a staining pigment. or
No.
something.
It's the acrylic, yeah. Because Windsor, I mean, I'm not using phthalo blue, this is ultramarine blue, which moves very easily, typically with watercolor. You know, all of these colors with watercolor would move, the red, the yellow, but these no, because of the acrylic. I like to think of it as each little pigment particle is encased in acrylic. I don't know if that's right, but sounds good. So let me put this aside. Get the floor covered here. And here's one. When I was doing these, setting these up for you, I was fooling around in it too long, so you see what I have here. This is the dried edge with the orange. That's because I went back in when the paper was already dull, the wetness was dulling down. Then I got the that line. Is it bad? Not really. I can incorporate that into anything else I do with this. So if I wanted now to, yet I have to wet it. But if I wanted to cover it up, to camouflage it, not cover it up, but camouflage it, I can do that. Sometimes when I do people that you know, like a portrait kind of a thing with people, I'll take this acrylic wash with, and they have like ash rose, they have flesh. Even though Crayola banished that color out of their crayon box, Holbein still has it. There are several colors that you can use as an undercoat. You know, if you're doing watercolor portraits, you could use that fine thin layer of the lightest value in the face. Let it dry, and now you can work all the rest of it on top with watercolor. If you know the shadow doesn't shape just right, just wipe it off. Push it away. You know, take your brush, push it, move it. That first layer will stay put. So you can be very sneaky with this stuff. So, you know, I can add to that. And now the so-called mistake is gone. I've made it something else. Can I put the blue on right away with this? I can, but it's going to start mingling like your watercolor does. That's why safety, in terms of safety, if you want to do something like a sky that can be really annoying to do with watercolor, it was this type of sky, then this is a really safe way to get at it.
Do you ever mix with the white wash to get a lighter shade?
Hmm?
Do you ever mix the paints with a white wash to get a lighter shade?
I don't, because it gets chalky looking. With watercolor, the idea is that, you know, your lights, you hope you're going to be able to use the whites of the paper for your lightest colors or tones. If you know, if I screw something up on a painting, I've lost some light somewhere that I really want, I will find other ways to handle it. I will mix casein with a little bit of color and put it on very, very thin. And the casein dries insoluble, so it will also set up a barrier. And then I can, you know, put another layer on top, get very thin, so you can disguise, camouflage your mistakes. It's kind of fun to do once you are familiar with working on all of these things. It's quite fun to fool your audience. I could go up into this. Let's see. It's dulling down here, so I just want to show you what happens. You see the dry brush I'm getting? So that's where I know that I didn't wet well enough. It's damp there, but I can get a dry brush effect. Now, if that's something that suits your purposes for this sky, and don't forget, let's say you started with that sky and it didn't work out. So, you know, pivot and do something else with it. Skies do lots of things. I'm staying away from the orange, it's still wet. As soon as something starts to do what you don't want it to do, stop, instantly, stop. Dry it, pick up where you left off.
You're in it.
Carolyn, if someone wanted to try watercolor, would you steer them towards traditional watercolors or towards gouache?
Oh, watercolor.
So they
It's
get
it's the brush work that. You know, it's, you have to be familiar with the wetting and the brush work. More importantly. So yeah, I think to appreciate this, you have to have major mistakes with watercolor, and then this is like, ooh, hey, this is really great. I can get around all that stuff this way. So there you have something else, but I was able to work over what I had before. What I have under here. Oh, it's just one I said I don't like this one, but there's nothing really wrong with it. I just decided not to use it. Oh, here. So these were some pieces that I did as a demo a while back.
Carolyn, should we take our little break right now? It's
Yeah,
getting on in-
I'll do this really fast.
Yeah, okay.
That you could then, after this, you could just come up here and look at all this stuff.
Okay, good.
These were, I was using this same sky that I did just now, but I put this foreground in it. This is the car photo. But I did each one the same way for my classes, and you can see the difference in each one. So I'll just spread these out and you can, I'm essentially finished here. So you could take a break. You could ask me questions later, whatever you like. These foregrounds are not finished.
Carolyn brought examples, prints of her beautiful work that you can take a look at. And there's another chance for the drawing for the Fenway print. It is opening day, so I think it's really meaningful. And you can help yourself to refreshments and then be able to look at these up close and personal and ask questions.